Hi, and welcome back to Mingus on Tech. I'm Ken Mingus, Executive Editor at Computer World. I'm here with Lucas Murian, Senior Reporter at Computer World. We're going to be looking at wireless charging, so stick around. Okay, so Lucas, I had high hopes today that at Apple's big event in Chicago, they'd be releasing the AirPower, the wireless charging pad that they've been talking about since last fall. They did not.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, wireless charging has become a big deal. You've written about this extensively. And once Apple moved the iPhone 10 and the iPhone 8 to the Qi, it's the Qi standard, right?
Yeah,
That's what
Qi.
they're using. Last fall.
QI.
Yeah,
Yep.
QI, and pronounced Qi. Obviously, that was sort of what a lot of companies were waiting to see, which standard Apple would jump on. And so now that they've made a decision, I'm starting to see these wireless charging pads show up in cars. You've got, devices like this. And so I just thought it'd be good to get a quick update on where things stand and maybe talk about a couple of recent controversies that have emerged about whether or not wireless charging is convenient, yeah, but also bad for your phone.
Right.
So where do we stand right now? We're sort of waiting for Apple to move the AirPower out, or there are lots of chargers already on the market, right?
Yeah, there are lots of chargers that use the same Qi specification. In fact, I've written about a few of them in one of my articles, ones that actually emulate what Apple's doing, which will enable 3 different devices to be charged at the same time. So really quick, I just want to say wireless charging. There are basically 3 different types of wireless charging. You have magnetic inductive charging, you have magnetic resonance charging, and then you have long distance or radio frequency charging. This uses magnetic inductive charging, the same thing they use with their Apple Watch.
So that's got to be right on top of that's where you have to have the device that's being charged specifically very close to the charging plate or pad, right?
Exactly.
You can't have it somewhere far away or, it's
Right.
got to be right on top of it.
The Y and X axis has to be pretty much oriented perfectly in order for it to charge. And you can see with this, if you move it off center very much, it won't charge. But it's what most companies are using right now. It's effective. I don't know how much efficiency it brings, but I think we talked about.
We did. We talked about the
Yeah.
whole idea of, the idea that if you've got a charging pad, it is nice to be able to just come in and put your phone down and let it be charged up.
There's some convenience.
But I mean, really, how much time are you saving or wear and tear on your port, by not plugging it in every time you put it down, like we've done for the last 10 years.
Yeah.
Whenever,
My port never wore out,
I don't think I've ever had a problem, other than maybe some lint getting into it.
in, take a pin very carefully, get that out, and
Or toothpick, so
or
it's not
toothpick,
metal.
yeah.
Don't try this at home, kids. All right, so magnetic inductive, magnetic resonance, and RF is sort of the holy grail of wireless charging.
Yeah.
That's the sort of thing that when and if it finally arrives would allow for basically wireless charging in the air.
Right. You walk into a room, your device starts charging. It's more of a trickle charge because it can be unsafe if you start, sending 15, 30 watts over the air. You fry your insides.
Do we literally your insides or like the device's insides?
No, I think it'd be unsafe. It's not.
Yeah, I don't
it
think
has not
anybody
been
wants to
approved.
be walking around in a highly charged electrical room.
Exactly. So what this does
Okay.
is it trickle charges with a few watts of electricity.
So wherever you are, if you've got a device on you, it's going to be charging
Constantly
when you're in the room or within the whatever space is getting this RF signal. In terms of things like we've talked about this that one of the things that may make wireless charging become more ubiquitous is when it's built into furniture.
Right.
IKEA I think already has something out where there's like a desk with a charging plate. Is that the same type of charging as what's used here?
Exactly. Yeah. Some of them use resonance, which they're basically all the same. It's all magnetic resonance. The difference is how large the copper coil is in the transmitter and receiver. And the larger the copper coil is, the further the distance. And when I say further the distance, we're only talking millimeters. So you can move a device around. It has a little more range of motion. It doesn't have to be right on center, perfectly aligned. But you still have to place it on the pad. So what a lot of office furniture makers are doing is they'll make a conference room desk, for example,
Yep.
and they'll have a little X marks the spot on top of it, and that's where you can place your phone to get charged, or in some cases, very few cases, your laptop. There are some companies that are coming out with wireless chargers that can, like Witricity, that can actually send out 30 watts and charge your laptop. And those would be positioned underneath the table and transmit through the wood or
Like
composite
so if you've got maybe a 3/4 inch or maybe even an inch, thick piece of wood, the signal would travel through that and would still charge the
Exactly.
device on top, as
Exactly.
long as it's in the right spot.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
One of the things I wanted to find out too is, for a while there was a lot of debate about different kinds of standards, as to which charging standard, I guess, or specification would be the one that would win out. And it seems like there's been a lot of companies have sort of joined forces that were at one point almost like rivals,
Right.
and they seem to be sort of moving in the same direction. Do we think that Qi or that standard is going to be the one now that really does win out?
Yeah,
Or is it
Qi
too
has
soon
the
to
most members, the most industry members. So members like Apple and Samsung and Verizon. But it's a little incestuous too, because they also belong to the other
Just in
standards
case.
group. Yeah,
just in case the other one somehow takes off.
I mean, because it's all under development. The technology is constantly improving and developing. So you used to have three. You had A4WP, the PMA, and the WPC, which stands for Wireless Power Consortium.
Yep.
Power Matters Alliance, and I can't remember what the A4WP stands for. Anyways, the A4WP and the PMA merged to create the Air Fuel Alliance. So it's one now.
Okay.
They basically shared a resonance and an inductive, so tightly coupled and loosely coupled magnetic charging. So they have both.
Right.
So, and then you have the WPC, the Wireless Power Consortium, which supports the Qi standard,
Okay.
which is the most widely used right now.
Mm-hmm.
So those two organizations, however, those two consortiums are also sharing technology. So it is kind of becoming one big industry.
I kind of like that, though, because I don't want us to get into a situation where you're dealing with VHS versus Betamax,
Yeah.
or some sort of competing standards where you have to, not only are you picking a device, but you're picking a wireless charging standard. So I'm glad that they are kind of sharing this stuff, and I'm hopeful that eventually, all devices will use the same standard, and you'll have to find some other way to differentiate the hardware. I also know that when the iPhone 8 came out last fall, there was this bit of a debate between regular charging and sort of fast charging, which was like 5 watts versus 7.5 watts,
7.5 or
which
more.
doesn't sound like a lot. And it's sort of an incremental speed boost in terms of charging a device from 0 all the way up to 100%. But it was something that Apple did finally implement. And so, devices now can go up to 7.5 watts.
Yeah.
Although the hardware, I think, if I'm remembering your stories correctly, could go to 15.
Up to 10, 15 watts,
Yeah.
although nothing really supports
Everything's
it right
still
now.
7.5 right now.
Yeah,
right?
it's 7.5 right now. There aren't any 10 or 15 watt chargers. Yeah,
Okay. All right. So
or devices capable of receiving that charge. They can actually, the Qi specification and the others can emit that much of a charge.
got it. Okay. So with that as a background, the thing that caught my eye recently was there's been a couple of questions, debates. One of those things that you see online about whether or not wireless charging is potentially bad for the battery in your device, and the rationale there seems to be that if you're constantly topping it off, that one of the things that is good for batteries is to have them sort of drain down and then charge back up and drain down, but not 0 to 100, or not just keeping it like 98, 99, 98, 99, 100. Has there been anything definitive that tells us whether or not wireless charging is, over the long haul, bad for your device?
In short answer, no.
Okay.
And the first story I wrote about this became very lengthy because there were a lot of different opinions on this, but they all seem to focus around the fact that you don't want your phone to have these great distances between fully charged and empty. So you don't want to. It's better to keep your phone topped off, which wireless charging does,
Yeah.
than to have it drain and recharge and drain deeply and recharge, because it does affect the number of charging cycles
Okay.
that the battery can sustain.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think one of the people that you had interviewed said that ideally, given current battery technology, that it's almost better to have a device that sort of stays somewhere between about 45 and 55% charge. So you kind of keep it about half full and let it go down a little bit, charge it up some, and that would be ideal. I tend to keep mine topped off, because I got it either charged in the car with a cord or charging wirelessly in the office. And I'm not seeing, of course, it's still a fairly new phone, but I haven't seen any kind of degradation in terms of battery life, and I haven't seen any drop in charge cycles that I'm aware of.
Yeah, I've never downloaded the software to do my self-diagnostic on my iPhone 8, so I'm not sure whether wireless charging has affected its cycles. But the piece we included from ZDNet, I think it was, the author said that he had downloaded some software and it showed that the number of cycles his battery could sustain had dropped because of wireless charging. But that's, again, allowing it to drain fully or drain a great amount and then recharging it again. So dropping it below like 30, 35% and then recharging it full again. But the bottom line is this. A, you can replace your battery. B, the batteries typically, even with the life cycles they have, last more than 2 years.
Right.
And these days, who keeps phones more than 2 years? Not
Really?
a lot of people.
I certainly don't.
But even if you do.
Okay,
we've got one
Chris,
behind the camera.
Our video producer over here, is waving from behind the camera. He does keep his phone for 4 years.
4 years. I kept mine for 3.
What version of Android is that 4-year-old phone on right now, Chris? Just curious. Whatever the latest one is. Okay, good. All right, good. I'm glad. That's a whole different debate. We'll get into that next time. But no, go ahead.
The bottom line is, don't worry about it. It's not really something you need to worry
about
a lot about. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because I was looking at the story that you did most recently, and you had quoted Daniel Steingart, who's an associate professor at the Department of Mechanical and Aerospace Engineering at Princeton, and his last comment sort of sums it up for me. If you're thinking about wireless charging, obviously it's one of those you should have on your devices because it future-proofs your device for whatever's coming. But he says, yes, a cell phone's an investment, but relative to the incremental cost of a new battery, there are much, much more important things to worry about in the world.
And he's wicked smart. So.
He's wicked smart. So from the Princeton professor, that's the advice, is there's a lot of debate about wireless charging. It probably will not blow your phone up or ruin its battery. Things are still in flux, but in general, it's probably a convenience that you better get used to because we're going to see more of it.
Yeah, we talked about car technology. Yeah. So isn't the next car you're going to buy, which should be any minute now?
That Ford Edge ST? Yeah, don't tell the partner. He's going to get mad. But yeah, it has a wireless charging pad on it, And I know Mike Dagonia, our Apple guy, he's got the Hyundai Ioniq. It's got a wireless charging pad in it. I mean, they certainly are showing up in cars right and left.
And it would be big convenience.
It would be very convenient to just be able to put it down there rather than have to get the cord and you got to loop it in and plug it into the USB port and all that. So coming to a car near you, perhaps a desktop near you, and maybe sometime in the future a room near you. Wireless charging.
Yeah, wireless charging. It remains to be seen whether it's a super convenience or not. We laughed about this, I think, a few times when I bought the wireless charger and put it on my desk, and I just never used the thing.
See, I use it all the time. I like the purple light. That's how I know
get
I'm
home
getting
and I plug my phone in. I don't think about it. It's just like
you're a Luddite, Lucas.
I don't know.
All
I
right.
guess.